I am Anna Seawold, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about growing ourselves while raising our children. I'm a psychologist, educator, and parent coach, and on this podcast, we explore how you can connect to your authentic self, practice radical self-care, and raise emotionally healthy children. Let's break the cycle of generational trauma for a more peaceful, kind, and compassionate world. Today, stop trying to be the strong mom. Grief, joy, and the power of vulnerability.
I'm Rebecca Thompson. I'm a family medicine and public health physician from Portland, Oregon, and the author of Held Together, a shared memoir of motherhood, medicine, and imperfect love. And you're listening to Authentic Parenting.
What does it mean to be held together when everything feels like it's falling apart? In this deeply honest conversation, I sit down with Rebecca Thompson, family physician, public health advocate, and author of Held Together, to explore motherhood beyond the highlight reel. We talk about the quiet strength of vulnerability, the crucial difference between pity and compassion, the tension between privacy and oversharing in a world that rewards public confession, and the truth that grief and joy are not opposites. They are often companions. This episode is about redefining strength in motherhood. It's about being witnessed in your story. It's about remembering the long view when the daily mess feels overwhelming. If you've ever felt like you're carrying too much, or wondered whether you are allowed to hold sorrow and gratitude in the same breath, this conversation will meet you there. Please enjoy, and as always, thank you for listening. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast. Are you ready for my rapid fire questions?
Yes, I'm very intrigued. Let's hear it.
It's been hard to come up with questions for rapid fire questions for your conversation, but here we are. Number one, do you believe every family, no matter how it's formed, has its own version of normal?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. And you give me short answers, yes or no, or maximum like couple of words. So another question, can grief and joy truly coexist in the same parenting moment?
Yes, definitely.
Is vulnerability a form of strength in motherhood?
Absolutely.
Do you think parenthood requires us to rewrite our expectations more than once?
More than once per minute. Yes.
Is community essential for healing during reproductive or family building challenges?
Yeah, for most people it is.
Can the hardest parenting moments teach us more than the easiest ones?
Sometimes.
Is it possible to feel joy in a story that's filled with loss?
Yes, but it usually takes time.
And the last question, do you think modern families are stronger when they break traditional molds?
They can be. They don't always have to, but there's more room to do so now than ever.
Great. Thank you. You passed. So did any of these questions spark interest in you that you want to explore further, or should we talk about something else entirely?
Oh, I mean, we could spend an entire conversation on any one of those ideas. I think all the theme that came up a couple of times about can grief and joy coexist? Can you feel joy about something that's sorrowful, and does it take time for that to come through? Those kinds of ideas really jumped out at me in your questions, but I would love to explore anything in any of those ideas that you mentioned.
And that's because I write those questions and I'm interested in that topic a lot. I guess that's the bias. So I really want to give you an opportunity to speak about the book a little bit and how many stories you have and what those stories are about. I love the title, Held Together. It's just such a warm nice feeling, a
Thank you.
title, especially when it comes to motherhood. So tell me some of the main themes and stories of this book.
Yeah, well, big picture, like you said, held together is the overarching theme, and it has so many meanings. It's about all these stories coming one integrated whole. It's about the way that we as women hold things together when everything seems to be falling apart. And it's about how we can hold disparate ideas like joy and grief, and they can both exist in the same space. And so backing up a little bit of the sort of the granular of how this came to be, as you mentioned, it's it was a collaboration. It's with a group of other women. So back when I was first finishing up my medical training and starting out on my career, my husband and I had gone through a string of really complicated pregnancy medical conditions and losses. And it was just so isolating and so overwhelming, especially feeling like I should know what's going on. I'm a physician. I should be able to handle this. I help other people handle these kinds of things all the time. And yet going through it myself was very different. And I found that, initially I was hesitant to share with anybody, even close friends, what we'd been going through, family members. Even though I felt supported, I just didn't feel like I wanted to talk about these things much. But once I started to open up just a little, I realized that, as you mentioned in your quick questions about community being so important, I realized that everybody around me had a story they wanted to share. And these stories weren't just about starting their family, creating their family, building their family. These stories were about relationships over generations. So I realized I wanted to find a way to preserve what we were all learning and to collaborate to create something bigger. And I reached out to a group of women. It turned out to be 21 other women that I already knew were part of my community, were friends, some friends I'd, known for several decades, patients I'd cared for over a few generations, and medical colleagues that I worked with in all sorts of, about half the collaborators in Held Together are medical professionals, anything from doctors and nurses, to massage therapists, psychologists, all sorts of different fields of healing professions, and invited them to work together to capture and share the most compelling version of their story that we could create by talking about it, recording their words, and trying to capture those words from the earliest days of family building all through the years as their relationships grew and changed.
As you are speaking, I'm wondering why is it that oftentimes when we go through difficult experiences, we I am like that too. And my friend was recently going through something very difficult and she's not reaching out. If I don't reach out, I know she's going through something. She doesn't. So, like, why is that? Are we ashamed? Do we need time to process on our own a little bit? Do we not trust others? Like, what was going on for you? Are we afraid to be vulnerable, or the pain is too much to bear, let alone to open up? Like, what was going on for you?
I'm glad that you're making a distinction there where you say these are things that we do, but what was going on for you specifically? Because my first thought was, well, everyone handle things differently, whether they prefer to process on their own, with others, over time, quickly, whatever it may be, right? But for me, a big part of it was I definitely didn't mind people seeing me as vulnerable or imperfect. That was never the issue, but I did not want to be pitied. I knew that I was strong. Didn't know how I'd get through it, and I did doubt it for sure sometimes, how this would all work out. It was really, really hard, and the unknown, the having no idea what the future holds, that was some of the hardest part. But what I really didn't want is for people to feel bad for me. I wanted to be in solidarity with people or collaborative in community, any of these things. But I felt like when I was still early in my story and everything was pretty much bad news, one thing after the other, it would be inevitable that people would just feel sorry for me. And there was nothing proactive or healing in that.
Yeah, I hear you. I can relate. But I feel like I learned so much from this podcast. It's like, wow, there's a big difference between pity and compassion.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if people like how often do we get pitied by people? Do we pity people or do we show compassion? I started thinking about those things differently, through this education of this podcast and
Mhm.
having spoken to many people. I do also fear that people will pity me, and that's not a good feeling, right? You don't want that. But compassion, I think that's also hard for a lot of us to receive compassion. And do we even know the difference between compassion and pity, right? How does that sound? Maybe we can explore this. Like, what can someone say that can sound pitiful about that situation? Or what can someone say that is more compassionate?
Yeah, the difference to me, I don't know what the official definitions are, but in my feeling about these ideas, pity is sort of an end point. Pity is somewhere that doesn't really ask you to go a lot farther. You look at the person's story and you make assumptions. You kind of think you know what's going on. It doesn't have curiosity and compassion. I really think, and I've said this a lot of times in thinking about and talking about this book and all the stories, I feel like curiosity is the foundation for compassion. We don't have to truly be able to understand what someone else is going through. We never really can quite understand it and know it, but we can understand what they might be feeling. We can leave space to ask them and to just listen and hear them, even if we don't kind of agree with how they're understanding their own experience. I think that's compassion, is that openness.
Yeah, I hear you. And then there is this interesting thing happening in today's world, oversharing. So even through social media, people overshare so much, right? I'm just contrasting with what you said and wondering if you have any commentary around that. It's like people overshare about medical diagnosis or I just saw someone I know, I interviewed on the podcast. In fact, this woman is going through double mastectomy and she's like, I'm being wheeled into the operating room. This is like minute by minute oversharing.
I don't know. I mean,
Is this normal? Is this okay? Like,
well, maybe this gets at your question about like, is normal for one family. If one family is considered like off the path of the traditional, can they still have their own normal? Sure. I mean, I don't feel like I need to tell her she can't do that. If she wants to do that and other people want to consume that content, that's fine. You can be over there doing that. What it brings up for me is, I think you've talked about this on a previous episode, if I remember, the difference between privacy and secrecy. So we don't have to be secretive about things. Like I'm comfortable. People will ask me when I'm doing interviews and conversations, like on podcasts, what's off limits? I'm like, well, nothing's off limits. I may not, I'm not going to necessarily volunteer everything, but if you can ask me any question you want, and I hope I'm going to handle it diplomatically and steer it towards something that's relevant and interesting, but it doesn't mean that like we need to take off our shirts and show all the scars necessarily in that moment. So we can be private people who have our own inner lives without being secretive in a way that harms us and doesn't allow us to connect with others about those vulnerabilities.
yeah, yeah, and those lines are blurred these days
Oh,
through
for sure.
through social media, unfortunately. And yeah, we say messages like this, share your story. There is tremendous power in rewriting our stories, sharing with others. It's helpful, it's healing. And then there is the oversharing. And like, where is the line, right? What do we share? What do we not share? I feel like people struggle with this balance.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your perspective on that clinically as well in your work. I mean, and historically in your work and your training, that's got to come up all the time.
I mean, I feel like a lot of young folks these days, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't have any refined thoughts about this. I feel like I feel uncomfortable sometimes when I see people posting such revealing things publicly. Or yesterday, someone posted in a local Facebook group asking for medical help. A mom saying, I'm experiencing those symptoms. Is this perimenopause or this is something else? And my first reaction was, I never comment on anything on Facebook, but my first reaction was, why don't you go talk to a medical doctor? Like, who are we to steer you to some direction, even if we know something, right? But so I think people are seeking advice in public spaces openly. And I think that can be harmful. People are sharing publicly about their diagnosis, about their medical procedures, about everything about them and about their children in real time. And I'm not sure if I disagree with that. I don't do that personally. Do I believe in sharing your story? Yes, but not while you're going through it, not like you said, not, you don't have to take your shirt and show all your scars and be very vulnerable because that's too much and you don't know what you might get. It's not going to be compassion and curiosity and kindness. Oftentimes people can throw stones at you. It's like it opens you up in ways that is unnecessary for you to experience new pain. Is there power in writing your story and sharing with others? Yes. Maybe in a structured way, maybe on a podcast, maybe in a group setting, maybe in a private setting. I don't like this public way of processing and sharing things. I feel like it's harmful for the person, number one.
So it's so interesting. It does strike me that everybody is seeking community, right? Maybe we're all doing it really different ways. And we have all these forums now for people to do that. And we're all new at this. We're all learning it in real time. We're all like coming of age together in these digital ways. And I think the impulse is really, honorable. I don't know the right word is
I
really
agree.
understandable.
Yes, I agree.
Like they just want to share and find. I guess my hope is just that, whatever you share in any forum, however private or not private, that if you're finding what you need in these communities by getting ideas, brainstorming, seeing new perspectives, I think that's wonderful if that's in your comfort zone. I just hope for everybody that, like you said, they have a professional guiding them as well. So then the ideal is you're crowdsourcing ideas if that's something that really helps you. But then you're taking these ideas to someone who can help you sort them out and parse them and make sense of them. That would be my hope for people.
Yeah, I know. I like what you said about honoring the impulse because it usually comes from vulnerability, from loneliness, from isolation. When people post, my father died, my sister died, my such and such, and everybody's like, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. It's like, that's
Right.
definitely,
It falls a little
that's
flat.
not really helping that person right now.
I
Like,
know. But maybe, you know what? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it doesn't help you or me. I know it wouldn't help me. Actually, I think, and this is something I feel like I've learned in working on Held Together and people's different, especially kind of cultural and religious backgrounds. There's such a huge representation, a huge range of representations of that in this book. People really do process those things differently. And for some people, receiving messages of prayers from dozens or hundreds of internet connections, that may be really healing for them. That's not for me, but I definitely know people and have connected with people that have made me realize that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so they're just it's tricky. It's definitely tricky. Yeah.
Because we're all learning it together. Yeah, it's all new. Every moment, it's like it's changing so fast. Everything's changing so fast. I mean, that's a theme. Like, it's really hard to make sense of things when they're changing too fast. And that's what's happening in so many ways right now in our world.
So, speaking about joy and grief coexisting together, let's talk about that.
Mhm.
I feel like that's the lesson I learned this year in my life. And every year I relearn this lesson, like
Right.
the dark and light exist together. The joy, it's not
Hmm.
like when you're grieving, it's okay. You can also laugh and have fun and be happy, like this life. So I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think that humans are just really complicated to oversimplify, right? And we can be going through really, really difficult losses, but still have other things in our lives that bring us joy, or we can choose to find joy. I mean, not to oversimplify or to sugarcoat things, like some things are just terrible and hard and you have to get through them. But I feel like the big lesson here in all sorts of complicated family stories, and again, like we said earlier, it might take time. We might not understand this as we're living these experiences, but we can and we have to choose to make meaning, create meaning, not just find meaning. The meaning may not really be there so much. We have to do things proactively to bring ourselves into that place where we are open to change and receptive to the lessons and, draw on our power to shape our stories, even when these are things we never would have chosen, and even in opposition to what others may be telling us is expected of us and for us. I think we can hold more than one thing to be true. It's very overgeneralized, but were there any particular things from the book that jumped out at you like we could?
No, I'm more interested in how learning to hold both at once changed you and your family's journey, maybe a personal angle.
I think it's the details of the stories always remind me to hold things a little bit more loosely. Like, even if in a moment, now this is again going to feel oversimplified for huge crises, moments of crisis, right? But in our day-to-day challenges, day-to-day frustrations, it's like we can get really mired in those things and have trouble seeing the joy around you. So I think if we can hold things with a lighter touch, now again, day to day, not for coping with a huge, like monumental life event, then I think we can better, like, if we slow down, we can really find little moments of joy. So just like by way of examples, if you're on your way to something that you don't really feel like going to, say, whether this is an event or a job or a commitment, a meetup, something you don't want to do, or even just a commute that you're tired of. What can you do with that to bring in some joy? So let's say you're going to something where you know you're about to get some really bad news or deal with something you don't want to face. Is there something you can do on the way? Like, could you, if you enjoy being outdoors or movement, like, can you walk around the block first before you get in the car or on the bus or on the train or whatever? Could you put on some music on an earbud that you really enjoy or a podcast or something that will bring you into the mind space? Like, can you bundle anything? I think that's a kind of a practical way that again, it feels like really trivial, honestly, when I describe it in comparison to the weight of so many of the stories that we live. But I think it really has influenced the way that I try to like enjoy the in-between moments in those ordinary days.
Mm, love that. That's so beautiful. I agree. Those in between moments of everyday life is so filled with so many things. There are far and few in between moments. It seems like people, we have
Yeah.
to intentionally create those moments and not feel we're bombarded with information and stimulation and stuff. And I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday. I was meeting my client the second time, and I met him the first time last week. And my memories has been always great. Like when a client tells me who they are, their story, I remember like forever almost, right? So as I was entering into a session, I'm like, wait, how many children does this guy have? What was his story? I started wondering, I'm like, what's happening, Anna? Like you're not remembering. And then I realized, what was the movie I watched yesterday? What did we eat yesterday? I'm like, our days are so filled with stuff
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that you don't have time to pause, reflect, internalize, digest, and like let it sink in and forward. Like constant stuff is coming in, coming in, coming in. And we need to pause and reflect. And honestly, that's such a crucial step, even to teach our children that introspection, to know what's happening with you right now. What are you going through? What are you feeling? We don't have time for any of this.
Yeah, and there's this constant demand to give our attention to direct it outward and not and to look at things around us, not inside of us, and also to produce things into the outside world around us. So we have to sometimes be intentional about, okay, I need a minute now to step back in and like take in something that will sustain me, whether that's nature or something in your ears to listen to, or a food or a smell or some water, like whatever you need. What do you need to take in to kind of rebalance those things and not always just be either putting ideas out into the world or responding to all the external things?
Oh, so well said. I love this. I think I want to like linger a little bit so that the listener will take this in. This is so crucial. You're right. As you're speaking, I'm like, oh my gosh, the gazillion text messages we respond to, the gazillion things that require your attention, confirm this, book this, email that, right? Those are the things that take away from our limited resources, the attention, the time, and the energy we have. And we don't even yeah, you're right. Comparably, the in and out, the outputs are very different. How can we strike a balance and give ourselves something? Look inwards, right? Take a moment for ourselves. What do you do for yourself in your life? Like, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I gave some spoilers by the suggestions I just made, but I love to be out, I love to be outside. And I should say also that it's about connecting with other people while I do that to some degree. So I like to be outside. I like to move around in nature and see beautiful things outside in the world. I love to swim. I love to read. Just, I don't know, things that kind of are slower paced to counter all that. And especially walking, usually walking, I'm either with a friend or on a phone call with a friend, like a virtual walk essentially, if they're not nearby. So I feel like walking and connecting with others is sort of one of my main regrouping strategies in terms of community. And then for myself, it's like I really do like to be solitary. I'm very introverted, although I love connecting with people one on one or in small groups in a really intense way. I very much recharge by having quiet space on my own or with my family. Even with my family is fine too, but like hanging out together, watching a movie, reading books all quietly together, hanging out with our pets. We have a couple cats, just snuggly things. How about you?
Very, very similar. We don't have pets, but I do love nature for sure. Nature is the main thing for me. Talking and walking with friends, either in person or virtually. I'm known for that. I get sometimes so excited, like I talk loudly and laugh. Like some of the neighbors know that it's
Yeah.
me walking and
Walking
talking.
around. Yes, that's me on an earbud walking around the neighborhood having a one-sided conversation. I love it.
I know it's always fun. Yeah, I also love solitude. I do crave that. I need that. Although I'm an extrovert, I feel like I recharge in solitude. I need that. I need to be alone, alone from stimulation and people and everything else, just with my own thoughts.
So you're an extroverted introvert, I guess.
I
Because
guess,
you
yeah.
recharge on your own is the more introverted side, but then you want to be in the world more outwardly and connecting with people. Oh, I love it.
For sure. Yeah, those are my main ones, honestly. I think those are the best ones. So, I want to talk a little bit about redefining strength in motherhood. Strength in motherhood goes beyond just pushing through challenges. Learn why vulnerability, emotional honesty, and finding purpose in adversity are the true markers of strength in mothers today. I'm just looking through my notes. That's what I have.
Mm,
I want to hear your thoughts about redefining strength in motherhood.
yeah, vulnerability is such a catchword these days, but I mean, for a reason. I think it's really resonant right now because people did not really share things they were going through in the past and now maybe we've, as you said earlier, maybe we've like gone a little too far into the other side with the overshare. Yeah, there's some element of that, but I think it's because like when we can put ourselves in a vulnerable position, we understand a lot more about what others might be seeking as well when they come to us. And I think this is especially relevant to, of the 22 of us in this collaboration, half are some kind of medical professional, as I mentioned. And so there's a lot of like, how does the healer become vulnerable now, needing to be healed? And how do we understand our stories and our vulnerabilities when we're, as I alluded to earlier, like we're used to being the ones taking care of others. So I think that what this really comes to is so you're seeing a change in someone's perspective. Like she thought she was the one, in control of things, or even if not so rigidly, like she was the one who was going to be the helper. And all of a sudden things are reversed. And so I think this is one element of what is so compelling about all these stories to me. One of the biggest themes is that there is so much growth So we see people, by being vulnerable, just able to discover entirely new sides of themselves and new relationships and new aspects of old relationships that maybe they had kind of given up on, and things. Not all the relationships get better through adversity. Some of them dissolve, some of them can't withstand, and some of them are not better for going through challenges, but many of them are strengthened. And it's really powerful to watch that. And as readers, and for me as the person, trying to shepherd these stories with these women and interview them and try to write the story to capture their words, it's such a privilege to watch, to witness people growing and changing as their stories unfold.
Yeah, that's so true. When you tell your story and there is a listener, or when you are writing it, it's never the same story. It's the same story, but it takes a different perspective, different path. You are in a different place in your life. It's such a good exercise to do. It's from time to time, right? Because sometimes we have a story, we cling to it, and we always tell it the same way. And that becomes our victim story or whatever the story, right? And when you go to therapy, I think that's the whole point of a therapeutic exchange is to rewrite your story. When someone truly listens empathically and offers insightful questioning, you question your own narrative, not because it's not true, but it offers you new perspective. You see, oftentimes, like my clients are like, when I hear clients says, wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, yes, yes. Like I get excited because I help this person see something. Like my aim as a therapist in a setting is always to help the client see something different about their story, about their case, about the other person, if it involves another person, their co-parent, to learn something about themselves new. If I aim to hit those three things in one session, I'm like, wow, this was golden, right? If you walk away by just having learned something new about yourself, about your situation, and the other party, it's like, wow, I think that's transformative.
Yeah, this makes me think too. I think that being vulnerable in that sense, it opens us up to more versions of our stories. Like you're saying, you can tell it different ways and understand. This is, again, you can make meaning out of it and choose what you're going to take from it. I think it also really helps us to trust ourselves more. This is where the imperfection, imperfect love idea comes in. And I mean, it's, again, many layers to that idea, but it's one of the ideas is like we can have joy in grief. We can have love and like what's perfect for us, for our situation, even when things are not perfect. It can be, we can make things like kind of as they should be. What's the right expression? We can create something that fills some of the needs that we have at any given moment, whether for ourselves or in connection with others, if we can kind of be open to how to find these things and understand other people's stories better in order to understand our own as well.
Yeah. As you're speaking, and sometimes I give my clients this exercise, like when someone is stuck in one kind of narrative and they have like, they are the protagonist and there's a villain in their story. I often ask them to write the story from
The
different,
other point of
the
view.
other points of view.
Yeah.
And of course, we always have a hard time with that. Let's face it, this is not the easiest task. People hate me for that. But it's so powerful when you step into the villain's point of view and tell the story from their point of view. I think whatever it takes it's worth telling our stories, number one. But you need to have an audience, a witness, not like an audience like a whole 1,000 people, but someone who can hold space for you to tell that story. I think that's important. Otherwise, like you can talk to yourself in the room, it's not going to have an effect, right? That witness is important. That empathic other is important. And again, there is a quality to that too. If they're just you just don't want to vent and vent and vent and vent. We've learned from science by interviewing neuroscientists. I learned that Ethan Kroos talks about this. Like venting is good, but there is a point that it has to stop and you have to generate a new perspective. If you're telling the same thing over and over and the other party who is listening is not offering you anything to change your perspective or the angle, then it's not helpful. Then you're still stuck in your own misery, in your own story, in your own victimhood, whatever that you're stuck in, right? That there is an expectation. Let's talk about that. Like, what is expected of the witness? What can you bring to the table? Like, those women told you their stories, right? They healed through those stories. I mean, they could have told it to someone else and that would have not had the same
Hmm.
effect. What are
Many of
those
them,
qualities?
yeah, it reminds me, several of them, many really of them said to me afterwards something to the effect of, you know, I've talked about this a little bit maybe before, or I haven't talked about this with anyone before, or whatever range of that. But this is the first time now that we've gone through it and made sense of it in this way and written it down and told a story with it, the first time I feel like I can not move past it. Like I'm still going to live with it, but I can move on. I can incorporate it into who I am and my experiences and my past. And now I can move forward in some way. It really, I think being that witness, and I'm so grateful that I was able to provide that service, if you will, that listening, that level of listening to people. And I like that is ultimately why I did this is wanting people to be able, and reading this, wanting readers to feel like they could do this with friends, family, even in their own minds to understand their stories in these kinds of ways. But really, just on a practical level, I feel like it was carving out time, protected time, like you said, holding space for this and saying, your story is valuable. Like, I want to listen to it because I think it's really important. And I know you think that you're ordinary. And what does your story have to offer the world? I got that a lot on pushback. Like, I guess I'll tell you what happened to me, but like, why would anyone care about my story? I'm just some random person. And it's true that we got pushback on that. Like, well, it's not a celebrity memoir. It's not, these are just ordinary people. But I like to say it's the extraordinary moments of ordinary lives. And that's what I find most compelling. That's what I want as a reader and a listener. And so back to your question, like why and for what purpose? Like if we can just listen and be the witness to that, that has value in itself. And hoping that it will inspire others to do that in a way that is right for them in whatever format that takes.
It sounds like you have also changed through that experience. In what
Yeah.
ways have you changed? Like your expectations, like you went in probably with expectations, I'm gonna uncover stories, but like
Yes,
you
yes.
walked away as a changed woman. Like in what
I
ways?
I mean there were so many times and I can give examples like Stacy's chapter comes to mind where this is someone I was friends with for several years. I didn't like know really really well, but we were, good friends in the community and I thought I knew her story that we were coming together to talk about how she was now she was right about 40 and was having several children in a row kind of quickly and having this family sort of later in life than a lot of people do, reproductive years wise. And like, oh, I thought this was just going to be a story about sort of taking a while to find your family and have that all. And it was. But oh my goodness, her amazing backstory of her first relationship, her first marriage that didn't work out, I'll just say. There's a lot more to be like, it's still worth reading, even if you know that part. And I had no idea what she had been through. I just saw her as this happy pregnant friend who was so delighted to finally have this chance at motherhood that she'd wanted. And I never would have guessed what she'd been through. And she wasn't trying to hide it beforehand. It's just there was no space to talk about it. And to say to someone, no, I value your story and let's make space and let's go on a walk. Let's sit in a coffee shop, whatever it might be. Each of these stories, the whole project took about just over 10 years, but each of the stories was crafted over at least several years back and forth, doing an interview, transcribing it, giving it back to her, then taking those words, writing them to read like a novel, to read like fiction with story, narrative arc and all that, but completely true. And then giving it back to her and saying, well, what did I get wrong? And what should we add? And could you expand on this a little bit? Tell me more about that. And doing that iterative work over several years, over many sessions. And to just value her story in that way, I think it changed me. I knew that objectively that ordinary stories were valuable, but every time I hear a different one, whether, these from this book or now in the rest of my life, I'm reminded more and more. And I love it more every time.
Have you ever thought about doing this? I know you're a doctor, like you don't have time and all of that. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking like this could be a valuable service, not like service in a bad word, but like service as in you create that space. Now that you have experience how to listen, what's important, maybe you have learned the right questions to ask, to the prompts to facilitate this kind of maybe not 10-year journey, but a year-long journey for women, ordinary women who want to tell their stories. But there is no space for that. Maybe you can create that space and be that shepherd where people can come and create, whether it's thematic, whether it's motherhood, whether it's pregnancy or loss. I think there is need for that. And you already have the experience. It would be like a wonderful offering for people. That's number
It
one.
would be very rewarding. It
It
would.
would be very rewarding because as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, we walk side by side with other women. We spend time, we share meals, we laugh, raise our children together in communities. We don't know much about one another, not because we're hiding. Like, I know for myself, people rarely ask me questions. And if they ask, I will open up about certain things. But because nobody asks those questions, like I don't have a space to share. And I don't want to go to therapy.
Yeah, right. We're too rushed. It's like part of that same modern problem we were talking about.
Yeah, I agree. And so creating intentional spaces, and it doesn't have to be monetized, but it takes time. It could be monetized. I don't know. But I think that I feel like I always loved group therapy, and groups are always attractive to me. And we are, collective human beings, right? Where we are social creatures and we can tell and be held by a small group of women, and fathers can do the same. I think that there is value in that. So, how do you think someone who is listening and who is inspired, maybe they want to start something like that informally? Obviously, we all don't have time to do like for years, but on a smaller scale, are there any prompts that you can help women build vulnerability with one another and help share their stories?
Yeah, so my goodness, it's almost like I could have asked you to ask this question exactly because this is precisely what I hope that our book will inspire. People coming together and talking about these questions. And I wish I could sit with every person and spend those 3 years, listening to their story and going back. But really that's as parents, we want to raise our kids to be able to do the things that we model for them. Like, I hope that this will help model that for other people, even if we can't go out into the world with them every time and hold their hand through it. I want people to feel ready to do this. And so the big goal, beyond just getting these stories out there that I have is for these stories to be used in communities. So whether that's with groups of women, families, book clubs, teaching settings, I recently released on my website a list of discussion guides. And so these are all free, downloadable from my website, all just documents you can get. Kind of a general discussion guide you might use for a book club or something more kind of overarching themes. We've got specific themes related to pregnancy loss, assisted reproductive technology, adoption, fostering, surrogacy, religious and cultural influences on family and relationships, professional identity, illness and death of close family members, body image issues, self-advocacy, gendered expectations, travel, like any number of themes. And if you go into any one of these documents, you'll find at least several pages of questions, discussion questions, thought questions, organized by chapter. So say you think, okay, I really want to talk about, here's one, the influences of historical events on individuals and families, or genetic testing and other medical evaluations. You just go into that document and you'll find, say, like 5 of the women's chapters, and you might go and say, okay, Erin's chapter and Eriko's chapter and Olivia's chapter talk about this a lot. In our book club group, let's focus on those. So we really tried to create the resources for people to be able to take the next steps with these stories. And yes, I hope everyone reads them and enjoys them because I think they're just so immersive. And I want to point out, even though they're difficult, a lot of them are difficult situations, they are very optimistic, uplifting stories. This is not a downer. It's an intense book. Yes, please come join us on this wild ride of the stories. But I cannot promise you that you will not cry, but it will be cathartic and you will feel better afterward and you will feel seen. And so please take that to the next level and find others who want to dig deep like that. And we have all the resources on my website to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that. That sounds like you already did some legwork.
Yeah, we did that for the last couple of years after the book was mostly done and kind of going through the publication stages and the final edits and such. Over the past couple of years, we've polished up these documents and I just released them a couple months ago.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, I love that. I interviewed someone, I think last year, maybe, Abigail, I can't remember her last name. She wrote a similar book. She didn't call it a shared memoir. It was about the first year of motherhood, and she showcased 7 women in different countries.
Oh, yes. I know this book.
Do you know this book? I think it's called For Mothers, I believe.
That sounds familiar. It was on so my book came out in April of 2025, and it was on a couple of these lists about books to read for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great Mother's Day gift. I really appreciate that. And that book was on the same list. And I need to read that book too. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I interviewed her and it was fascinating. This is nice getting like this collective.
Yeah, I need to go back and find that one.
Experience. What is your favorite theme in the book?
We've touched on a few of them because one of them is definitely growth and curiosity. I think I would summarize the theme of saying these are stories about choice and change. And it encapsulates all of those ideas. It's the ways that we expect some things to go or just we haven't questioned it. Things are going along a certain way. And then all of a sudden we're in a completely different experience. And so it's the choices we make and don't get to make around those kinds of things. And then how we change either in response to those experiences or, again, because we choose to change. We may be forced, we may choose, but I think really all about growth.
I'm going to end by asking you a question that I start asking now as part of the format change of our podcast, which is, what's the hardest part about parenthood?
Remembering the long view. So just not getting mired in the day-to-day of the messiness of raising children, but remembering that we're raising adults. We want these humans to go out in the world and, be good people and whatever that means to, the moment and to themselves. And it's sometimes hard to keep a perspective on the long view. And so I try, but that's hard sometimes.
Thank you so much, Becca. I truly enjoyed our time. Thank you for the wonderful work that you have done. Love the title. Love the many meanings it holds. And
Thanks.
So I really appreciate you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Anna.
That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Be sure to hit that follow button so you don't miss future episodes, and take a moment to leave a rating and review. It really helps others find the show. I would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways. Join the conversation in the Authentic Parenting Facebook group or visit the contact page at authenticparenting.com/contact to get in touch. Authentic Parenting is an ad-free show, and your donations is what makes this podcast possible. Support the show by visiting authenticparenting.com/support or becoming a patron at patreon.com. Your contributions make it possible for me to continue bringing you weekly episodes. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening. This episode was edited and produced by Aminur. If you need expert support to bring your dream podcast to life, from editing to full production, Aminur can help make it happen. You'll find his link in the show notes.